Thank you all. Good to see you. Look forward to a great day. Love you, bro.
What up? Good morning. Can I get a little bit more energy? That's what I'm talking about. We're going to do this like Black Church. That call and response is going to happen the whole time because this is the energy y'all going to get. So I do want to level set this discussion with a response to what Asa said on stage. As much as he admires how I show up in the world, I feel the same way about him. I feel the same way about this gentleman. And what you guys are seeing today is a culmination of intention. Intention that started 20 plus years ago by a group of brothers and sisters humbling themselves for the greater good. So this room is a reflection of a lot of the decisions that this gentleman made, right, a long time ago, because he stood in the gap for us before culture became something that was highly regarded in corporate America, that was monetizable. This man was at the forefront of bringing that to the market, bringing that to corporations, but more importantly, being an example for people like me. So I want to make sure that I properly level set with who you're about to hear from, why he's here, and the fact that this is an amazing experience because I had this first conversation almost 23 years ago as an intern, Jordan Brand's first design intern. So we're going to get into it. It's a special day. First thing I want to know is you woke up this morning, you went in your bag, you pulled those kicks out. Tell me why you picked those.
That's a good question. Coming here today and what this is about as far as, Black folks in the industry coming together. And I had these in my closet this morning and I was like, you know what? I'm going to wear these as kind of a tribute to Virgil and to everything that he did and to the Black folks that have meant so much to this particular industry. So that was kind of my thinking when I put them on this morning.
Yes, sir. Give it up for Virg. Yes, sir. So building on that, as a Black man at the helm of Jordan Brand, you had the unique challenge of creating something that represented our culture authentically, but it still needed to be accessible to the world. It still needed to feel like something that anybody could relate to. So how did you navigate that authenticity? Because we're critical of ourselves, but we also have to be open for other people to participate. So walk us through how you did that from a strategic standpoint.
Well, I think initially one of the things that we did when we were like starting Jordan as like a separate brand was we identified who our core consumer was. And you remember this, and we were specific about and dedicated about who our consumer was. And so everything that we did was focused around being authentic to our consumer. And I think from a brand perspective, if brands aren't authentic, then they're not gonna survive. And I believe that we targeted the right consumer, and because the belief was, hey, if we get our guy and we focus on our consumer and get that right, we'll get everybody else. Because the consumer we focused on basically leads the industry. They lead in fashion, lead in what's going on from a style perspective. So our whole goal was making sure that we connected with that consumer and focused on that consumer. I remember, and I shared this story before, but when we were kind of getting going and the brand was starting to get a little bit of heat going, and I was in my office one day and I got a call from our Hollywood promo group, which that's the group that provides product for videos, movies, that kind of thing. And they said, hey, we just got a call from NSYNC, and NSYNC was hot at the time, right? So we just got a call from NSYNC, and they're performing at halftime of the Super Bowl, and they want to wear Jordan. I was like, let me think about that a little bit. So I got the team together, and we debated it back and forth because part of the people were saying, hey, this is a Super Bowl and we're trying to get our brand established. What better vehicle than that? And the other part of the team was saying, yeah, but that doesn't resonate with our core consumer. And so we kind of went back and forth, and at the end I had to make the decision and I decided not to do it. And they were upset with me about it, but to me it was the right thing for the brand. It was about being authentic to who we are and what we represented as a brand. And there were a number of decisions like that along the way where, we could have taken advantage of something that seemed like a short-term gain, but in reality, it would have not had a positive impact for us in the long term.
Man, that's phenomenal. And that was a great choice, by the way, too. Okay, so just want to point that. Just want to put that on the record. That was a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, Nelly was on that same show. I'm like, now, if Nelly, you know,
Yeah, like, you know, that fits the vibe check. What's interesting in what you said was you went to your team and you allowed the team to be included in that decision-making process. Ultimately, it fell on your shoulders. I think that's something that we need to really highlight in your leadership style is that most companies, most organizations, they talk about functioning like a family. I can tell you literally, Jordan operated like a family. Like, Dwayne is the godparent of my children. Like, Larry sat down and taught me about business and understanding entrepreneurship. So what gave you the insight that your style of leadership needed to have more of a familial vibe inside of a corporate structure in order to get the best out of us at that time?
Well, I've always believed that, you know, from a leadership perspective, first of all, you can't do it all yourself. You know, you could try, but you can't do it all yourself. And so my approach has always been try to find the right people, put them in the right goals, right jobs, you know, give them the guidance and direction that they need, and then get out the way and let them do what they do. And to me, and let them know that I'm there to support. Hey, if you need something or if you don't understand something or you got some questions, I'm here. But you're responsible for doing this. If I'm gonna do it, then I don't need you, right? So the reality is that's been my approach all along. And you know, one of the things that also has been approach for me is I always believe like we're all part of the same team, and to me, we should all be moving in the same direction. I also believe that if you're part of a team, if you put the team goals ahead of your individual goals, I think both will get accomplished. But I think if you put your individual goals ahead of the team goals, and a lot of times neither gets accomplished. So to me, it's really about if you're part of a team, then you know making sure that you focus on the team achieving those goals, because I think that will bring your individual success as well.
Oh, man. It's such an important gem because something that I personally experienced was being put in a position like as if I needed to hit a game-winning jump shot, like being trusted enough to say, hey, you're a young kid, but we trust you. That is something that doesn't happen as often because people think that youth equals lack of ability to execute. But in Jordan Brand, you guys saw youth as a strategic advantage because at that time, you were a young executive and you were doing something that seemed impossible by corporate standards. How did you maintain and build that reputation that you had as being the coolest man in the room that was able to make decisions under pressure, you know, at a time when everything was coming at you?
Well, if you folks have heard about my journey or read my story at all, then you know I went through some pretty crazy stuff growing up. And so to me, I mean, sitting in a boardroom trying to make a decision about selling shoes versus somebody putting a gun to my head or being in front of a judge trying to plead for my life, I'll take the first one over the second one. Because to me...
Yeah, let's give it up for that. Let's give it up for that.
But to me, that kind of helped me to be able to understand and deal with pressure and to realize that, you know, whatever the problem is, we can figure it out. As a team, we can figure out the solution to this and we can fix this. And so that's always been my approach, that you know, we can figure out whatever issues we need to. We got enough smart people in the room that we can figure out how to address it. And to me, a lot of times with those kind of issues, the sooner you address them, the better.
Man. And so we're going to double click on what you mentioned about your past. Because something that we've never talked about publicly is I was one of the first people that you shared that with because you saw a path I was headed down. Mm-hmm. And so y'all don't know the Jason I was. When I walked into Nike, I was still from the south side of Chicago, and I was doing all the south side activities. Let's just put it like that. And Larry pulled me to the side, and whatever it was that I was exuding in my energy, he didn't look at it as something that was meant to be demeaned or put down or accused. He didn't come at me with a judgmental tone. He sat me down like a big bro and said, hey, here's my story, there's another way. What I wanna talk about is, you did that for me, but you did that for so many others. A big part of your journey has been about servitude and leadership, but also building this trust with people who have been through tremendous experiences, who are underdogs. What motivates you to do that? Like, where does that come from? Because that's not an easy thing to do, to be able to be vulnerable and still maintain a position of authority with some young person that you may not know how they will receive that information and what they'll do with it.
No, but in the situation with you, you know, I was able to see something real in you. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, I see how I can help this young brother, and let me share some information with him and give him some insights to know that I'm speaking from a position of I know what I'm talking about because I've been there, because I experienced it. And so to me, when I see you or see other folks that I think can benefit from some of the insights and some of the experiences that I've had, then to me, it's like I feel like an obligation to share, especially for folks that look like me.
Man. And what's beautiful about that is the way that you interacted with us goes against what people believe is possible when you have a collection of black folks building a business. Like, we didn't have a lot of what people think, oh, they don't get along, they can't work. That wasn't the case. It was enough for everyone to be themselves and to experience, you know, the upside of all the work that you and H were doing, and then obviously the work we were doing in the market with the product. So one of the things that I learned throughout that process was the art of delayed gratification. Going into the industry as a young man and seeing all my friends become pro athletes, becoming millionaires overnight, and I was barely a thousandaire. Barely a thousandaire, right? And you and H. White would tell me about delayed gratification. Can you really explain what that means and why it's important for this generation of young creatives and executives to really practice the art of delayed gratification?
Well, I think, you know, to me, it really comes down to, like I said, making decisions that are, you know, short-term decisions that might look really good in the short run, but they don't have sustainable impact. They don't have the ability to kind of take you to the next level, but immediately they can be satisfying. But the reality is the delayed gratification is going to give you a lot more in the long run. And so for me, and for what we've, you know, tried to share with people is like, hey, don't focus on just getting what's happening right now, because that might be good for now, but it may not be good for what's coming. There's something much better if we play this out to the end. And you know, we were able to be successful. I mean, I could not have done any of what I did without H. White being right there with me. It was really him and I together that kind of had the vision and were able to put the right people in place and put it together. But to me, it is about, you know, not necessarily focusing on what's right here and now, but really thinking long term. And it's about having a vision for where you want to be, where you want your life to be, what you want your career to be, what you want the business to be, and really sticking to that vision and making sure that everything you do is focused on accomplishing that vision. I mean, we clearly had a vision for the Jordan brand, and the reality is there weren't a lot of people outside of the Jordan brand who saw that vision and who believed in that vision. But the folks inside of the brand absolutely got it. Everybody understood what the vision was, and everybody was focused on accomplishing that vision. And so we made decisions that were like, no, we probably shouldn't do this now because it'll be cool now, but what's it going to mean in the long term? And what's it going to mean in terms of accomplishing the vision that we're focused on? So to me, it really is about making sure that everything you do, all your moves are focused on accomplishing that vision for the brand or your individual vision.
Amen, amen. And I just give it up for that answer, man. That was important information. I hope y'all understand what he's saying. You have to trust the vision. Trust your dopeness. You got to trust the vision. One of the things that also stands out about your leadership style is that you have a lot of accountability. Like, you hold yourself accountable to a standard. We live in a world now where there's a concept called moral decoupling. We celebrate people when they get to positions of authority, but we don't question how they got there. And that causes this fissure in terms of what young people think leadership looks like. Leadership is not a person going on the internet wilding out, calling people out. That is not leadership. If you can't emotionally restrain yourself, then you are not qualified to lead, because it's impossible for you to make sound decisions. Something that I've seen you do consistently is to listen before you speak, hold yourself accountable to a standard, and then expect the best out of people. For the young folks in the room or the emergent leaders in organizations, is there any insight you can give them about how they can hold themselves accountable?
Well, I think, you know, to me, that's what leadership is about. It's not about, to your point, it's not about who speaks the loudest. It's about holding yourself accountable. And, being accountable to the team and the people that you're leading. To me, as a leader, that's a part of your responsibility, is to say, okay, and to take responsibility and take ownership for things that happen for your team. Like I was always willing to take the bullet for the team. You know, hey, we do this. If it don't work, I got it. Don't worry about it. And to me, that's part of being a leader. It's that accountability, but it's also taking responsibility for your team and making sure that people understand that, you know, you're here to support them and you got their back. You know what I mean? To me, at the end of the day, if your leader doesn't have your back, or you don't feel like your leader has your back, then you're not going to be able to do your best work, because you're going to constantly be wondering what's coming up behind you or what's happening. But if you know the person leading my team has my back, then you don't worry about that. You just focus on doing your job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the way that you built trust was so unique, because I remember distinctly you would walk around every morning and greet everyone individually. And that stood out to me because it made everyone feel like we had a personal relationship with you, regardless of level in the company. Like, I was entry-level designer, just barely doing shoelaces, and you still took the time to stop by my cube. Can you double-click on the importance of making yourself available as a leader?
Well, I think also the other thing as a leader is your team has to feel like you care about them, not just care about the work or care about that they get their job done, because you do care about that. But the reality is, you know, they need to feel like you care about them as a person. And I always tried to make people feel like and know that I cared about not just are they getting the work done, but how you doing? What's going on with the family? Are you okay? You know, and I think people appreciated that. And again, to me, that as a part of leadership is really showing folks that you care about their well-being.
Yeah. And so, as you talk about caring about well-being, one of the big topics right now in corporate America is burnout and people's mental well-being and feeling as if they're not necessarily being able to bring them full selves to work. That wasn't my experience at Jordan Brand. I was able to be my full self, my full South Side of Chicago self. God bless him. Can you really talk about, especially for us as black people, I don't believe in code switching. I'm the same person consistently because, one, I don't have a memory that great to remember how I code switch, so, and I never seen you do that. That was a strategic risk at that time for you to be consistent. Can you talk about the strategy you employed to ensure that you were able to still be your authentic self in that corporate environment?
Well, I think when we started Jordan, that was part of like what we wanted to build, somewhere where folks could come in and feel comfortable being who they are and not have to pretend to be somebody else or try to be somebody else. And I never, throughout my career, I tried to never like pretend that I was someone else or try to be someone else. I brought my as authentic as possible self, because there were things that I couldn't or didn't want to talk about at that point, or parts of me that I didn't want to bring to the forefront. But as much as I could, I always tried to be my authentic self, and I wasn't going to change up because I'm talking to one person versus talking to somebody else. And I think for black folks especially, you know, that's a challenge. That's a challenge, because bringing our authentic self to work every day, in some environments, you know, people aren't going to understand that. People aren't going to be able to, you know, accept that. But when we were building Jordan, we wanted to make sure that it was a place that everybody could be comfortable. Everybody could bring their true, authentic self to work every day and not have to pretend to be somebody that they're not, or act like they or something or someone that they're not. And I think people appreciated that. People appreciated the fact that they could come to work, be who they are, and not be worried about being judged or being, you know, pointed at or whatever, because they weren't the same as everybody else. And I always feel like, from a diversity perspective, to me, if you got 10 people sitting in a room and, you know, you're trying to solve a problem and everybody thinks the same way, there's only one possible solution that can come out of that. Whereas if you have people sitting in the room and people are thinking from different perspectives, the possibility of coming up with a number of solutions or a better solution, to me, is always there. So to me, that's like, it's a given that you're better off having diverse thought in a room than having everybody thinking and acting the same way. And so when we were putting the team together in Jordan, it's like, no, we want people who bring different perspectives to the table. And, you know, the other thing is I've always tried to make sure that we have a balance of old and new, like people who've been around, who get the brand, who understand it, who, you know, have lived it, but then people who bring new ideas and new thoughts and new approaches, and you kind of blend those two. And I think sometimes companies get too far one way or the other. You know, you get too far on like, well, this is what we're about and this is how we've always done it. Or, you know, we need to do this new. We need to throw everything away that we've done in the past. But to me, it's really about balance. And balance is one of my favorite words, if it's not my favorite word, because I think everything in balance is, that balance is what causes you or creates the opportunity to have a decent experience, no matter what it is. If you can maintain a certain amount of balance, then you're okay. If things get too out of whack one way or the other, you're in trouble. And so, like I said, I always tried to make sure that we had teams that had that balance of folks who've been around, but folks who bring new and fresh ideas to the table, and then you blend those two. And to me, that's where you get the best solutions.
Give it up for that answer. Give it up. All right, so we're gonna get ready to transition to Q&A if you're cool with that. So we're gonna pass the mic around. Anyone has any questions, feel free. Raise your hand and they'll come spot you. The microphone. Keep your hands. All right, we got the mic coming your way now.
Peace. My name is Olu. I'm from Chicago. Appreciate the conversation. So, Larry, I'm super interested in understanding like the day-to-day that you have at Jordan, and wondering like how much influence you have over what's going on, because when
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, just wondering about your day-to-day and like understanding how much influence you have on, you know, the day-to-day, because when I think about your sneaker, when I think about the Virgil, when I think about the Travis Scott and how innovative those were in terms of deviating from what like Jordan brand normally did, I was wondering what gave you all the, just like the open-mindedness to go down that direction, especially for a silhouette that has such a strong history, and understanding that like doing stuff like flipping a swoosh or deconstructing a shoe wasn't something that was normally done.
Okay, I think I caught most of that.
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's all good.
You were asking about the Air Jordan 1 and how we, so going back probably maybe 7 or 8 years ago, as we were looking for new ways to grow the business, we looked at the 1 and said, you know what, we can actually build a franchise around this shoe. We can take this from being just a shoe and actually build a franchise around it. And that was the approach that we took. And to do that, we partnered with different people, collaborated with different people, but the whole idea was to create a franchise around the AJ1, and that business now is almost a couple $2 billion, just the AJ1 itself. And so, but for us, it was the goal was to take that shoe and build a franchise and do different things around it to help elevate that franchise. So whether it was Travis Scott or whether it was Virgil or whoever, just doing things around the 1 to establish that as a franchise shoe.
Yes, my name is over here.
Oh,
My name is Malcolm Guevara from New York City. Larry Miller, the influence of Nike, the Jordan brand, how do you combat counterfeit and the globalization of Nike's influence?
So, you know, the Jordan brand, when we were talking about this earlier, I was talking to Reham earlier about this, but when we started Jordan as a brand, kind of a separate brand, and we had business, we did no business outside of the U.S. It was all U.S. business, and we didn't really focus much on outside of the U.S. because, and I think it was the right thing for us at the time. We needed to establish and build our brand here in the U.S. But we then started to think about, I remember Coach Ravling called me one day and he said, you know what position you guys are in basketball footwear in China? I said, I don't know, coach, because he said, you're number 7. He said, you guys should easily be 1 or 2 in China, and you need to focus on that. And we started to focus on it. And Reham, who is here in the room somewhere, actually went to China and established our footprint as a brand in China. And today we're doing a couple $2 billion in China. But if it wasn't for Ree going over and setting that tone and getting the foundation set for what we were able to do, it wouldn't have happened. But we had to actually start to say, okay, we are going to focus on business outside the U.S. We had to take MJ for a couple trips to Europe, to Asia, which he wasn't thrilled about, but he went and we had a good time as well. But so we had to start doing things that actually focused on markets outside of the U.S. and really started to market to countries outside the U.S. And today, over half our business comes from outside of the U.S. So it's worked out for us pretty well.
All right, Brother Larry.
Good morning, Jason and Larry.
Good morning,
Nice to
good
meet you.
morning.
My name is Chike, designer. My question is about leadership for both of you, actually. When you see someone on your team who's struggling or they're not living up to the potential you saw in them, what are some tips that you have for emerging leaders on how to communicate to the team or to that individual privately? They need to step up, essentially, or tighten up in a respectful way, but also in like a authentic way, as Larry did with you. You know what I mean? Like those kind of communications.
Oh, man, I think for me, as a leader, I have a responsibility to first ask myself the question, did I give them proper instruction? Because your team can only react to the instruction that they're given. So I don't point a finger and demonize the behavior first. I look at myself. Did I prepare them? Did I give them proper information? Did I give them proper guardrails? Did I give them proper KPIs to track? Did I give them the right resources? And if the answer to that question is yes, then I go to the second step. What happened, in terms of your ability to execute against what I've asked you to do? Normally it's an outside circumstance, pressure at home, financial constraints, family sickness, and you have to account for the fact that these are people coming into this environment with real lives outside of work that have nothing to do with what you're paying them for. And if you don't have that empathy, as Larry mentioned, then you're looking at them as a transaction, right? Instead of a chance to inspire and encourage, you're just trying to extract value from that person. And over time, they start to retreat and they don't trust you, they don't vibe with you, and everything that they fear is gonna happen becomes the truth. It's confirmation bias. They don't like me, they don't wanna believe in me, so I'm not gonna perform. And then now you're at this point where you're like, hey, I have to put you on a corrective action plan. What happened? So as a leader, you have to understand that first, it's about self-leadership, self-governance. Your title doesn't give you permission to now just overexert your will on people. It gives you permission to examine yourself. Because if you can't hold yourself accountable to a standard, no one on your team is gonna live up to anything you expect of them. So I learned that from this man, and from H, and from Dwayne, and from all the people around, because I'm like, they didn't point the finger at me when something went wrong. I saw Dwayne and Larry and them go into their mind and say, all right, did I give them all they needed to get that job done? Okay, if I did, all right, Jay, listen, hey, this ain't working out. What's going on? Talk to us. And so that was one of the best lessons that I learned, is that leaders receive the blame and give all the praise.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that sometimes people are in the wrong jobs. And the other thing is, you have to, once you go through that checklist and say, you know what, this person might not be in the right role, we need to figure out what the right role is to them so that we can maximize their contribution. Because somebody being in the wrong role, you're not going to get what you need. No matter what you do, it's not going to work. And I think that sometimes people just are in the wrong role and they need to be put in a role where, like I said, they can make the maximum contribution.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, one more question. Got time for one more. Oh,
I have a question. Hello, my name is Amira Haynes. First, thanks for taking the time to give us this knowledge.
I can't hear you.
My name is Amira Haynes. Thank you for taking the time to give us this knowledge. My question is, as both of you guys being regarded as Black geniuses in your own right, what do you think is the mark of a great Black genius?
The mark of a great
Black genius. Humility. I would say humility. A genius never calls himself a genius. Because there's a thing called, it's called the Dunning-Kruger scale. You guys familiar with this? The Dunning-Kruger scale measures a person's ability to self-project intelligence to
He
the
ain't normal like us.
I have autism, I'm a nerd, I love it all. And what it is that some people are really good at saying, I'm a genius, I'm so smart, look at me. Then there's other people who are like, man, I don't feel that I have any intelligence because the world seems to not understand what I'm saying. I'm on the right tail of that. I just talk about stuff and then people are like, oh, that's interesting. So I think it's a level of humility you have to exude because genius, the term is thrown around too much, just like the term GOAT. Like, I worked for goats. I've seen what it takes, and the shadow work that they do, the accountability that they have for themselves, that's admirable. You don't hear people walking around saying how great they are. Like, you'll never hear Larry talk about how dope he is. That's why I'm here. I'm like, I'll talk about how dope he is. You know, because it's a level of humility that I think comes with that responsibility of having a level of intelligence and authority at the same time.
I couldn't agree more with that. I think humility, being humble, recognizing the fact that nobody can do it by themselves, and no matter how smart you are, you need a team. You can have a vision, but if nobody's willing, you can't sell other people and get other people to buy into that vision, you won't be able to execute it. So to me, it is about humility. It's about being able to lead from the behind sometimes and recognizing when you need to step up and when you need to step back. And I think to me, those are all things that make a good leader and things that I've tried to emulate and tried to do throughout my career. But I know in no way I'm not a genius. There's no. This one maybe, but not me. He's the not normal one. I'm normal. But no, I think it is about serving. To me, leadership is about serving. Really, it's about how you serve the folks that you're leading, and it's about how you support and make sure, like I said, that the people you're leading know that you care about them.
Sir, give it up. Well, on that note, I just want to give you a personal thanks, a personal, recognition of just how much I respect you and the work that you've done and the trust that you gave to me as a young man by telling me about your journey. And I just say thank you for that because your contributions have set up this industry in a way where we can see that black people can contribute at the highest level as business operators, not just endorsers, not just athletes, not just cool people, but people who run P&Ls. And that's huge, man. So thank you for being you, bro. Really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate the fact that, not everybody listens. Not everybody, takes information and uses it and is able to benefit from it. And you absolutely were. And you absolutely did. So, that makes me feel proud that I had played a part and made a contribution to who you are today. And before I leave, I just want to call out Dwayne and everything that he has done. I remember when Dwayne left Jordan. I remember when Dwayne left Jordan with this idea of creating a design school for inner city kids, for kids who didn't have access to it, and to see what it has come out to at today. It's amazing to me to see that. You can have a vision, you can have an idea, and this is the results of that idea. So I just want to shout out Dwayne and just say,
Yeah. Yeah. I also want to shout out Dell because it takes an equal strong partner.
yes.
And them two, they're an example for all of us. Yes.